Ooh, a portal has been opened. Wonder what's in the portal. Tell you folks, does this get scary to y'all? Sure does me. So I'm going to keep right on reading. Hope you don't mind. Anyway, Prince Warriors Volume 2, Chapter 24, The Cipher. The kid stared at Ruach, not understanding. What portal? And why? Levi asked. Someone brought something back to Earth, something I had not allowed. Ruach's words were punctuated with an underlying anguish that the children had never heard. Evan felt his heart beating faster. He thrust his hand into his pocket. The key was still there. He needed to put it back as soon as possible, but then he would never get to see inside his locked room. Xavier looked around at the others. Not any of us, he responded confidently. We haven't taken anything except for the seeds. Something very dangerous. Ruach's voice reverberated through the cave. His hood scanned all their faces. The kids looked at each other, suddenly fearful. Evan pulled his hand out of his pocket and put both hands behind his back. He glanced about, trying to act as innocent as possible, but he could barely breathe. Have you ever felt that way when you did something wrong? Maybe it was her, said Levi, pointing to Ivy. It was not me, said Ivy, her face reddening at the accusation. Maybe it was you. I didn't take anything. Levi and Ivy began to argue. Come on, you two, cut it out, Xavier said. He glanced at Ruach, who stood motionless, his hands folded into his long sleeves. Something about his stance gave Xavier the shivers. This was clearly more serious than he thought. Levi and Ivy seemed to notice it as well and fell silent. All the kids began looking at each other, wondering which one of them had taken something from a Hortos. Evan shifted his gaze to the floor, fear gnawing at his belly. He's got to know it's me, he thought. He opened his mouth to confess about the key, but Ruach suddenly spoke aloud. Where is Brianna? Levi and Xavier exchanged looks. We figured you didn't call her, Xavier said. She wasn't at the wreck with us. Her grandmother had to go to the hospital, Levi said. He paused, thinking of something new. Wait a minute. Was she the one that took something? Ruach did not answer. But she wouldn't do that, Levi protested. She would never. He stopped, falling silent again. What was it? Said Xavier softly. I think I know. The kids spun around at this new voice to see Mr. J.R. in full armor standing behind them. Dad, Levi said, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to take care of Bean. She wouldn't listen to me. I had tried talking to her before we got the call about her grandmother, but she would barely say 2 words in a row. I got to thinking about that, this change in her. That's why I'm here. I began to wonder if Brianna might have been infected by a cipher. A cipher? What is that? Asked Levi. It's like an int, began Mr. J.R., but more specialized, more subtle. Ciphers attach themselves to someone and have the ability to twist and contaminate the person's thoughts. That's their goal. Ponyrose sends them for that very purpose. You mean like the Jedi mind trick? Cool, said Evan. Not exactly like that. They cannot control a person's thoughts, but they can make suggestions that are very tempting and attractive, to the point where a person may not be able to distinguish their own true thoughts and feelings from those of the cipher. Mr. J.R. looked at the warriors. Was there a time when Brianna was alone here, where she might have come across one? Evan spoke up. She stayed in the garden after we all left. I saw her in the corner of Keys. Corridor? Corrected Xavier under his breath. Why didn't you tell us before? Levi turned to Evan, his voice accusing. I didn't even know she did anything, Evan said. I thought she was just, dawdling. She does that a lot, especially when there's flowers and stuff around. Levi looked at Ruach. Did you know she'd taken something? Ruach was silent. Why didn't you stop her? I cannot stop anyone from making wrong choices. I can only help them make right ones. There was deep sadness in Ruach's tone, rooted in love, as if he would have done anything to prevent Brianna from suffering the consequences of her choice. Evan bit his lip, his hand going back into his pocket again. He had to get this key back in the box as soon as possible. He looked around for the little mouse hole he had seen the last time. It was so far away, he wouldn't be able to go over there without everyone noticing. His gaze moved to the various tunnels that encircled the cave. One of them led to the Hall of Armor where those locked rooms were kept. But which one? They all looked the same. This cave was way too confusing. So if this thing has attached itself to her, Manuel was saying, why can't we just go over to her house and unattach it? It's not so easy, said Ruach solemnly. Once the cipher has locked on, only the person infected can get rid of it. And quite often the person does not want to because her thoughts have been so distorted by the cipher. You will have to convince Brianna that she must rid herself of it. But you said something about a portal opening. What does that have to do with the cipher? Asked Levi. If something from here is brought to Earth without permission, it opens a portal between the seen and the unseen worlds, Ruach explained, which will allow more of its kind to come through. More Cyclops? Asked Evan in a small voice. Ciphers, said Xavier, bopping him on the head. So that's how it works, said Manuel. One cipher will open the portal for more ciphers. Not only ciphers, said Mr. J.R., but ints as well. Think of the ciphers as special forces designed to infiltrate a place and make a clear path for an invasion. An invasion? Asked Levi slowly. What kind of an invasion? An invasion of the unseen, said Ruach. So you're saying there's going to be an invasion on Earth soon? Xavier asked. Very soon. And what can these ciphers or ints or whatever they are do to us? Can they kill us? Asked Evan in a tiny voice. Ciphers do not kill physically, said Ruach, but they will take over the mind so that you cannot think clearly. And worst of all, you are no longer able to hear my voice and receive clear instructions from the source. The ints do the same thing with their darts. The dart itself can wound, but it's the poison in the dart that causes most damage. It hardens the mind as well as the body. So all a person can hear are the lies of the enemy rather than the truth of the source. There was silence, the kids pondering what this could mean. We need to close that portal, said Xavier finally, and capture any entity that comes through the portal, int or cipher, or any other slave of the enemy, added Mr. J.R. How do we do that? Xavier asked. Might I suggest some really potent bug spray? Manuel asked. First, Ruach interrupted, you will need the protection of the helmet. He spread one arm to the trunk. The latch unbuckled itself and the lid creaked open slowly, releasing a wide beam of white light. 6 round, hazy objects floated up from inside the trunk and hovered in the air. At first, they looked like white balloons, but as they grew more distinct, the kids could see they were transparent helmets, smooth and round with extra coverings for the ears and neck. "Cool," said Evan, excited. "They'll protect us from the ciphers?" Xavier asked. "From any enemy force that seeks to control your mind," said Ruach. "They looked like bike helmets," Levi muttered, unimpressed. "They're going to make us look like dorks." "Some of us are dorks," said Manuel. Evan laughed, and Levi rolled his eyes. "If you go into this coming battle without your helmet, you will become something much worse than that," said J.R., looking at his son reprovingly. "Sorry," said Levi, hanging his head. "James," said Ruach, "give the warriors their helmets." Mr. J.R. nodded and moved toward the hovering helmets. He reached out to pick one. When his hands touched it, it became a solid object, no longer transparent. He handed it to Levi, who put it on his head. As soon as he did, the smooth, plastic-looking surface seemed to break into facets, each tiny flat surface reflecting and magnifying the dim light of the cave. Even the sparks grew interested, clustering around the helmet for a better look. "Whoa," whispered Evan. "It's like a geodesic dome," Manuel finished for him. "What's that?" "It's kind of like a circle built on a network of intersecting circles," Manuel said, not very helpfully. "It makes the whole structure stronger. With this helmet, you can withstand all the attacks to your mind that the enemy can throw at you," Mr. J.R. said, "as long as it's on your head, of course." "I can't feel it at all," said Levi. He reached up to touch the helmet to make sure it was real. "Like it has no weight." "Believe me, it has plenty of weight," Mr. J.R. said. "You might not be able to feel it, but the enemy will." "Awesome," said Levi. After putting on his helmet, Evan began strutting around, trying to act all warrior-like. Xavier put his on and stood straight and tall, like a soldier ready for battle. He gave Evan a shove to make him stop strutting. Ivy put on her helmet, feeling the sides and top to make sure it was really there. "Comfy," she said. She flung her head down and up again, but the helmet did not budge from her head. No straps either. There was one helmet left over. "This final helmet is for Brianna," said Ruach, taking the last piece of armor from the air and handing it to Levi. "It will be your job to see that she puts it on." Levi swallowed hard and nodded, taking the helmet in 2 hands. "Okay," he said. "This will help you." From his sleeve, Ruach produced a small scroll made of delicate paper and sealed with the crest of a Horitas. He handed it to Levi. "Make sure she reads it." Levi nodded, tucking the scroll in his pocket. "He always has something up his sleeve," Evan mumbled. "Now," Ruach said, folding his long arms together, "Levi, Manuel, Xavier, and Ivy will return to Earth with Mr. J.R. to protect your friends and convince Brianna to release the cipher." Evan perked up, realizing his name hadn't been mentioned. "What about me?" Ruach's whole being turned to face Evan for a moment. Evan thought he could see 2 eyes glowing from the depths of the hood. "I have a different appointment for you, Prince Evan."